Hey everybody, it is Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to show you how you can paint a red rose in a black background step by step, fully explain. I'm going to show you how to freehand draw it in, but I also provide a free traceable, so wherever you're at in your art journey, I have those resources for you. To help me do this lesson is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's going to make sure that everything you need to see as I'm talking about or demonstrating it, you can see. Kind of a quick note on this lesson, I barely used any white. So put out very little, even though it's on my palette at the beginning, just put out a little bit or later to see if you need it at all. It's just something to do. I had it out just in case I needed to pre-paint the rose white. Lots of tips in this on how to do this. There is a mini book available on the website. If you just came for the rose, we're so happy to have you. However, I'd love to invite you to take part of Acrylic April, which is a daily painting release on the topic of flowers. So if this is fun, definitely stick around. Guys, there's nothing to do but for you to get your paint and your brushes and come back and meet me at the easel right now because we're going to paint this rose. So we're on an 8x8 again today. I'm so glad you guys made it back. Hey, John, they're back.
I know.
It's amazing that you're here. We're on an 8x8. My wish and intention for you is that you have a rose breakthrough. So whether you're just doing this one or you're doing the whole program, that it's a rose breakthrough. So you know where the paint is on the palette. Mars black, cad red, cad yellow, titanium white. I'm feeling cheeky. I thought I'd just try a couple colors and see how it went. Let's find out if we all regret it later. I'm going to load up a 3/4 inch angle. You could just use any brush to do this though. We're just going to paint the whole surface black. What do you think of that, John?
I think that's a pretty good first step.
Pretty okay?
Makes a very low stress. Get some
Low stress.
surface coverage. Now, if you find it's like the paint isn't sticking or it's getting a little like it's not adhering to the paint surface.
Yeah, that's one of those crazy things that can happen to you.
Yeah, what do you suggest there?
Well, I mean, like, honestly, I try to stick with canvas companies that don't coat with anything really weird.
Uh-huh.
You can gesso, you can like force paint a layer and then paint over the top of it. Like this kind of takes care of that for a lot of canvases, or you can rinse the front. These are all things I have done in varying amounts to fix a canvas that for some reason says, I know I was made a canvas, but I don't feel like I am a canvas and you can't put any paint on me.
Makes the funky little dots.
Yeah, it's just where you're like, I'm painting you, and it says, no, you're not. And then you're like, I'm painting you, and it says, no, you're not. Oh man, John, it's a rose day.
It is?
Yeah, I put it in my own like personal challenge that I was going to do some of these roses. May we all be okay in the petals. I can get a little lost in my petals. And so, why do I do this to myself?
So you can study the petals?
So I can study the petals. So I can study the subject matter. And that's really what study is to practice a concept or an idea so it becomes familiar and second nature. Roses are actually weirdly complicated. The important thing to remember to think of them as a bowl, right? They're the shape of a bowl, and then the petals are unfurling in there. So you really got sort of that flat surface and that round. And if you can find your light source, you can generally at least get the sort of expression or gesture of the rose. Look at me just being all like, I have a black canvas. All right. So I have a nice black canvas. You can buy these like this, by the way.
You did a thing.
I did a thing. I did a thing. Let's see how the rest of my thing goes. Now, I do want to dry this. So I'm going to take my hair dryer and dry it. When we come back, I'll show you the next step.
I'm not going to keep his ears.
Well, I'm going to slurp right in their ear.
All right.
That's happening. All right. I have a number 4 round, and I'm going to begin my flower up here. If you're doing a traceable, this would be the stage that you would do it. You put that on the canvas and then follow along. if you're going to be like me and you're like, I'm finally going to get this rose thing, then you would just do as I do. And I'm going to explain this step by step. I'm going to show you where I put everything and how I get the strokes. And hopefully in short order, there'll be a flower.
Hmm.
And I'm going to begin with a little of my black and red. So in this painting, I'm just mixing my Mars black with my Cad red. And I'm going to come up here in this sort of upper, if you divide the canvas into quarters, into this upper right quarter. And I'm going to make a little bit of a curl here. And then I'm going to press down a bit. All right, now, if your red is not covering the canvas, you may need to do each of these segments in white, dry it, and then go red over it. What it is that your paint doesn't have a lot of pigment, and that is the workaround for that. All right, so I'm going to come here and then be like, all right, well, it has a little friend, a little sister. There's always this sort of like twirling extra. I'm going to press down and come around. Swings in. And then actually kind of makes a downward swoop. I'm going to bring this down, kind of curving off this back edge here. Now, I'm going to come back into my black. Kind of shade this a bit. See that? And then back into the red to make sure this front area is nice and light. So we want the back of this sort of shaded into the background. Because in a rose, the petals, where they all join at the stem of the flower, which is sort of directly back here, if you imagine at the center of the twirl of a rose, if you make a mental line straight down through the rose, that's where the stem is. Sometimes that helps me. Maybe it will help you. Sometimes that helps me. Make another little curl here. And then I might get a little redder. I come up and curl there. Well, that's a lot. So let's call this a step.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's what I'm trying to figure out a new way to teach you guys roses so we can all just paint them loosely and expressively.
Breaking it down.
I'm trying. Let's go for it. Let's see how we do. I think we're going to do great.
Smaller steps.
Smaller steps, maybe. Little micro bites. In this, we have another petal that kind of comes across the front here. I'm going to get more red into my mix. Not my pure red. I want to kind of reserve my brightest reds maybe for the last little bit, but it's going to be pretty bright. And come little divot. See my divot? Because these petals are sort of always a hot mess.
Yeah.
And brush that down. I'm still just on my number 4 round. And this goes back in towards the bowl. I can go back into my black and shade this down towards the bowl. And I think I may get some just pure black and come through here and just make sure that there's a defined shadow between this petal and that petal.
Right.
I picked this sort of red rose in a black background so that we can do this extreme shading and it will help us mentally build that rose.
Oh, that's cool.
That one's pretty good. I'm going to say that there's a second little maybe petal here. That we can apply, and I'll come back with a little more red right here. Remember, no coverage. You've got to do white, dry, and then go again. And a little brighter red right there on that inside of that petal. And the brighter red right there, that tip. Smidge here. Smidge at the top right there. Perhaps a bit here. And then just shading it down into, I really thought I was going to have to use the blender like through this whole thing. And I don't know if I'll have to get it out, but so far I'm okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're working it.
Really going well.
Yeah, it's going okay. Let's talk about this sort of far side petal that comes up here, makes a little divot and comes off.
Okay.
I love how I sketched it with a
A bit
little
of
bit
water.
of my paint water.
That's cool.
You can do that.
Does this break this down, or is this another? If we keep
No,
going.
not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet. I think
I'm not.
after maybe the next few petals here, we're going to do another little step.
I'm not trying to second pedal here, but
You're not trying to second guess my petals.
well, I just don't want to have to backpedal.
It's a challenging thing. Come in here and I'm kind of using my darker black and red. Now, where this comes close to the main rose, it's really quite in shadow. Right? And these should be bright compared to this part of the petal. So I'm adding black as I go down. It's red, but it's very shaded. Just another little bit of very shaded. Let's get real black in there. See how we're just using value? And I'm just kind of, it's not really a scumble because I'm not disrupting the brush too much, but I am definitely using a kind of circular, soft, irregular stroke to help blend. Not using any medium, not using a specialty paint right now. I'm just using what I have. This works out, you might end up with just a bunch of roses that you've got to paint. Going to continue to add a little highlight up here. And I think at the end of this one, I'll call it a step because it'll need to dry. So I can continue to add highlights. But I think I can kind of really, even from here, see the rose happening.
Yeah, I can see it blooming from the darkness. Do do do. And that's this step's portion of the unnecessary sidekicks commentary.
The unnecessary sidekicks commentary. Okay, I just clean my brush. I'm just going to just make sure that I don't have any hard edges and everything is sort of soft and blended through here. Okay, let's call this a step. We'll come back and continue to add petals. So we have some more petals back into the background here, but they're quite dark. So that's, we see them, but barely, right? So it blends into here, kind of comes up to a point, and then definitely goes down. So at this stage, I've got just my dark red. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you okay?
Yeah. I don't know what happened there.
Snuck up on you.
It did. It just came out of nowhere. It said, "Guess what?
You
will
have
cough
a cough
now."
reflex, and I'm going to use it. Your body said.
Right now. It said right now.
Surprise!
I'm going to continue to add black into this mix just to make sure that the shading is there. Now that doesn't mean that I can't come along the top here and pop with just a little bit of a bright red. There's also kind of a dark little petal back there. See that kind of peeking out?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to come up front here, interestingly enough. Right? Okay. And we're going to get some red. And this is going to start here and come out here into the zone of space. So this is an edge petal. It's sort of facing more to us, at least the way that it curls over, that lip of it curls over. So this would be like pretty red for us on the outer edge here. I'm going to make it pretty red. Into my shading. Make sure it's sort of dark. See how I'm making sure there's a value there?
Yeah.
Between this petal and that. That's what I'm working on. Now we'll still have like highlights that we have to kind of do to exaggerate everything, but I just want to make sure that you can kind of see the implication of this petal going into the bowl. Back into the black I go just to make sure that that's shaded. So we're just building that first level or layer of all of that up. Another kind of interesting bit, it's more up here. Make it thick. This is again the petal bent over. Sometimes what you see is just the highlight of the lip of the petal catching the light.
Right.
And that's what really makes that rose. I have a little bit of it there. And then it has another little friend behind it. Interestingly enough, the way that it's folded now would put it in shadow. I'm kind of trying to shade that in. Let's end here. And then with a very bright red. What just catches me every once in a while.
Sorry. It must be the dry air.
It probably is. So I feel like I've gone up too thick. So what I'll do is I'll come in and curl in. See how I reshape that petal? That's the other reason that I do like the black and red, like these tonal studies,
Yeah.
is that it does let me, like if I'm observing and I'm like, oh, hey, I think this got a little too one way, I can always come back with a little black. Now this does shade into black pretty hard. So I'm going to come back into that. Make sure I kind of capture that. Because it's going to be when I come back with like the next bright, bright layer. You know, and that's what we're constantly sort of playing against. Yeah, this is red. But the back of that bowl is redder. So I'll get that roll as I'm going. That'll take me a little minute to do that. And shading. Sometimes you have to know when the flower would need to be dry for a technique to really register. Okay. I'm curving this line here. Sorry. And maybe a little more red in the outer lip. I'm going to just get this a little wet. Still a 4. I haven't really moved out of that 4. Now let's kind of tear in that petal. See how I did a little tear there?
Yeah.
And that bright red here. I will need a brighter red when it's all said and done. But again, we're just shading, and there's quite a shadow in this part of the rose, right? So this whole area there is much more in shadow than you might think. And we know we're going to come back and pop highlights and pop little elements. We're just building this little structure up. Let's call this a step because that was a lot. And because I got this wet, I'm going to dry it. And when we come back, we're going to continue to add petals. So we're going to continue to build out the petals because if you think about it, a rose sort of falls open, right? The petals are very tight in the center and then the outer petals fall open. And so with the face of the rose being here, we're going to be seeing more of these petals clearly, right, in perspective. Just fun flower facts that you may
Facts.
or may not have.
There you go.
I'm going to take a bit of my red and again mixing it in just a little bit of my black. And I'm going to come across here. Make another little petal that's sort of really just, let's come in a little bit. There we go. So that's an interesting, what? I know. That red. Just building out those layers. If you did the traceable, some of this may be more like, just filling in the zones with the correct value. Right. But if you're trying to see how these structures are built, this unfortunately is the work that needs to be done.
Just zone by zone.
Zone by zone. Honestly, petal by petal. Like you just build the structure like a brick house. Layer the bricks. And this has been a journey for me on YouTube painting roses.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. That's looking okay. It's okay. And then, here, underneath here, perhaps, how far over is it? Maybe here. There's sort of a little bit of a petal in the dark. Petal in the dark. So I'll curl that over.
Sounds like an awesome 70s rock band.
Doesn't it? Petals in the dark. But it would be. I'm going to make sure that there's shadow there. And I'm also going to make sure that there's shadow here. So even if I'm like hinting at that deep dark petal, we're still seeing that. And then coming really almost out from here. And then over is another very bright leaf. You just want to build each little leaf. And again, realize that there's these spaces, these pattern spaces where let's say that there's one here. It's kind of almost peeking out, but we only see its little lip. That's not bad.
Not at all.
All right. Not to belabor the point, but we'll call that a step and we'll come back and continue to add more. So when I have this basis in, I can kind of look and go, I really want this to be out a little wider. See how that looks just a little better? Fills that little petal out. That's just lovely. And then coming over here, kind of at an angle. I'm just sort of sketching in its outer shape. It's this kind of wonderful line. So it goes up towards the left, curves around, is going to come back down and has a little shade behind that. So there's going to be a shadow here in the center, and then there's going to be a shadow here. Let's get our little highlights going first. And I probably could move up to a bigger brush, but this is in my hand, so it's what we're working with. What?
You're just like, I have it in my hand, so this is what I'm doing. You know
Sometimes I
what,
get
though?
like that where I'm like, man, I am thinking.
It's okay because it just demonstrates the flexibility of the one brush.
Well, there's no, and I mean, I've made brushes and sold brushes, right? And will again. And I can tell you that unless you're doing decorative painting where the brush creates the stroke and the load of the brush creates the stroke, there isn't a brush that's just like magic for the technique that you're doing. Right now we're just kind of shading this and I'm just pulling this in. I'm going to kind of curve this brush stroke down. And then almost on the front of this, join down is like maybe a brighter edge. I want that still kind of shaded. And I'm going to come back and add a highlight there and there, but right now we're just getting in that kind of set of color values. And this here will have a shadow on the outside and then a highlight along here and a highlight along the outer edge. And that's one that I will probably build up after I get the basic forms put in. All right,
Those
this goes back into
forms,
shadow and then
those pesky forms.
pesky forms. But that's, where the flower comes from.
Bureaucracy.
I don't know that there's so much bureaucracy in a flower as there is.
You said forms. Got to fill out all the forms.
Got to fill out all the forms. I guess that's true. Sometimes I like to just make sure that we see some of the petal and shadow coming down.
It's a little known fact.
Little bits of color.
This is why.
This is why what?
This is why the rose is Ron Johnson's favorite flower.
Is the rose Ron Johnson's favorite flower?
Because it's full of forms and made of bureaucracy.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. Who's Ron Johnson again?
From Parks and Recreation?
Swanson.
Well, you know what it was is that.
And no, he hates it. It's Leslie Knope that likes forms. He wants no bureaucracy. He would like all of the government to grind to a halt. If you watch Parks and Rec, you know what I'm talking about. It's a character. It's a fictitious character.
A fictitious character. It's true. But she's been not making me. She's been helping me stay on the appropriate episode so I don't miss any of Parks and Rec.
Because you missed so much of it from before.
It's true.
Just going to continue to add the shadow here. Getting a little shading in. And then when we have that shading, I might come back and get just a little more red and be like, oh, highlight here a bit. See how we're doing?
I do.
You just highlight little bits of it and Okay, so we have this basic form down. Look at us go. We've got kind of a rose happening here.
It is.
Kind of a rose.
It's
It's a
almost
rose
a
doing
formal
rose
rose.
things like they do.
It's,
So when we come back, we've got to put highlights on here and some shading, and I've got to decide, what I want to do that with. We're definitely going to use yellow to brighten our reds, and I think we're going to have some fun. So we have this basic pattern in, and we see our rose, our petals are opening. We have, petals in the background, and we've got nice value changes. But now we have to create pops of highlights. I'm going to try with this round first to see if I can get the effect that I'm looking for. This is a hog round. It's a number 10 by Raphael brush company. It's really lovely. It's in the D'Artigeny line that I can never say. But
mm.
I'm sure when I see them in person, they're going to really be correcting me about. I think I'm going to get a lesson on saying the word.
Your pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. I'm fairly sure there's going to be some feelings. I'm going to grab a little bit of my red here. I was so sure I was going to use a lot of white. No white.
Yeah.
And I'm coming on the edge here.
Just going for the full saturation.
Yeah, this is just pure red. Like on the toe of the brush, I'll come in. And I may have to also do the round again. And you can really see that red though. Now, in contrast to some of the other colors that are here. And again, I'm just sort of shading. See, I'm shading down into that petal. I need to come back with a little black. I always can. Look at us coming back with a little black. Let's look at that overhead and see if we got enough pop going there. That's a lot of pop.
It is.
A lot of pop. You can always take a little of your red and yellow together too. I like to lighten red with yellow. That's another way to maybe capture some. I don't want to pull the rose into an orange though.
Hmm.
I just want to show some highlights. I'm going to come back over into my red. And maybe in here, I think I'm going to switch back down to my number 4 round synthetic, right? Because it's going to give me some control.
Ah.
I'm going to shade that a little bit. So now we're shading it some. Try a little red and white. Well, that's actually looking kind of nice too. So I'm okay with that. It's another nice value. It takes it more into a coral.
It's really pretty.
Going to just edge the lip of that second petal and then this one as well. So there's 2 there. Let's bring it out a little bit. Down. Hitting some highlights. That's some red and yellow. We're just hitting the highlights. A little of that bright, bright highlight. Now here's an interesting thing, right? Like you'll be catching edges that are lit sometimes on a petal. Let's see how I'm just making that highlight. Let's look at that overhead.
All right.
See how that just pulls that forward?
Really does.
It just really does. Simple, simple, simple stuff. Right? So it's the cad red and the cad yellow. I know I've got a little bit maybe right here again. But interestingly enough, now this is kind of like, I didn't even get into the white here. I need a very bright line here. And the inside of that petal. Right? So this is the inside. Then the petal, it rolls back. And so some of that petal, the roll is shaded. So I have to actually highlight the bowl. So I'm getting some just red, maybe a little yellow. It's really bright
Yeah.
here. And I'm just brushing back towards the shadow. And you'll notice that I'm curving the brush stroke as well to also inform the shape. So this petal you see, because even though it's in shadow, you see it by the highlight on either side of it. The highlight here and the highlight on the other side. Let's get overhead and see if we can see that. Yeah, that's really good. Back with maybe just like a bright red. Okay. Here we go. Rolled that petal. I love rolling a petal.
Yeah.
Let's come right here and let's highlight this. Maybe a little yellow red. Always shade it. It's those exaggerations. I really thought I was going to be on the hawk, but then I'm back here.
Yeah. You wanted the
Yeah, I really thought that, but then I'm back here.
what makes you choose the different ones?
This one is just giving me control over, like I was doing the hog because it does a nice feathered edge, but this is just giving me more control over the way the shapes are a little bit complicated.
Hmm.
Just a little highlight in that one folded petal. And back into the shaded. Second layer is really just pops it. So complicated painting, also simple painting.
Yeah.
Thought I would use more white than I did. curving this, if you'll notice, the brush strokes. There we go. That little petal kind of curls up and you can see it curved. And we'll get a little bit of our red and our yellow. Just put that little value on that inside there. More red. Curl that brush stroke. The direction that the petal grows. You know, and then you can always kind of shade it in the center. It's a fun value study, isn't it? And that's what we're really doing here is like, this is really kind of a value study.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, that's a little too much black, but that's okay. You just come back with a little red. Needed the shadow there anyway, so it did not hurt me. And that'll happen sometimes. You'll get to painting and you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You don't got to worry about that. You just a little more red there. I'm just popping highlights.
Really looks cool.
Yeah, just a cool starting place. You know, we'll get some color in. I'm so low key this lesson. It's because I'm thinking really hard, just so you know I'm okay.
Well, that's why I wasn't trying to.
Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't even a. Yeah, John always knows when it's like, I can't tease her this lesson because, like, she will fully lose the painting.
Yeah.
And other times he's like, I can totally mess with her. And then he does.
She's all got the pedal down.
A little red. I'm just coming back in with like these pops of like red. It's fun for me.
Yeah. It's fun to watch.
Well, it's fun to make the flower show up. That's what we're doing. Just making the flowers show up. And this is going to give us the skills to go into, you know, other flowers that are in that same sort of shape space.
Can't wait to see everybody else's flower.
I think everyone's going to do really good on this.
Actually, we've done several flowers here.
Well, because, you know,
There's been flowers.
that's the theme.
But I meant rose.
Huh?
I meant rose.
Yeah. Well, and here's
This one's the
in
rose.
on the channel we've done a bunch of roses, but like roses, clouds, there's certain topics. I'm adding little highlights here at the edges that I just wish to get a better handle on. You
Yep.
know, because we paint them a lot. Kind of exaggerating that.
You could say it has a lot of layers to peel back.
Well, don't they all? Don't they all? All right, so let's go overhead. Really, this is all this was, guys.
Wow.
Just a little rose study to get us ready for later roses.
Beautiful rose.
Whether you use the traceable or you freehanded it with me, hopefully you're thinking a little bit more about how they're built and how those shapes go together and how shadow That deep value of shadow in where the petals connect is the key to it. That edge of the highlight, deepest shadow builds your rose.
Speaking of shadow,
Hmm.
where are you going to hide your signature?
Oh, dude.
Where's,
Maybe.
dude,
I
where's my
don't know.
signature?
Here? Maybe? Let's get a signature.
Dude,
When we come back, I will tell you guys where what's next, where's next, all those things.
yeah,
What to do next.
we found the signature.
I don't know. I'm gonna just stick it here.
Ta-da!
One of many, hopefully to come, but it's our first little like we did a value study, so now we understand it better. You ready to do it more? John, we did it.
Did.
Another rose has been checked off the box. I'm so proud of you guys for doing this. If you're here for just the rose, this is awesome. If you're here for the 30-day painting challenge, I'm really proud of you guys for showing up. It is hard to show up every day. I've been there. I've done it. I've done that daily painting process, and you guys are doing amazing. I cannot wait to see your rose. Remember, you can share it with me online using the hashtag for Acrylic April 2022. Or in group, we have the Acrylic April group. Anywhere you want to share your results, I cannot wait to see yours or the full 30 collection. Again, subscribe because that's how you get the notifications. Ring that bell. Guys, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and I want to see you at an easel really soon.